carried. So the honourable member for Langley Aldergrove has the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have the honour of rising in Canada's Parliament to join in the debate about the privilege question relating to the Liberal government's latest scandal, the Green Slush Fund. But before I do that, Mr. Speaker, I just want to take a moment to mark this historic day and congratulate our neighbours to the south for a very decisive election, and congratulate Mr. Trump for regaining the White House. Canada and the U.S. have so many ties, not just economic, which is going to become very relevant for us, but also social and family ties. For me, it's my daughter Christy and her husband Brad and their 4 children, my grandchildren, all proud Americans living in the state of Washington. So what's the future of Canada-U.S. relations going to look like? Well, we don't have to look any further than a speech that President Kennedy gave here when he was first elected in 1961. And this is what he had to say. Geography has made us neighbors. History has made us friends. Economics has made us partners. And necessity has made us allies. Now, Mr. Speaker, that is as true today as it was 60 years ago. Now, the success of, it's often said that the success of a Canadian Prime Minister depends largely on how well they get along with the U.S. President. Politics is about relationships, after all. So how's that going to look in the next little while? Well, we don't have to look very far. History tells us that we should probably be having an election very soon. Thank you. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm here. This is now the 4th week that we're debating the Liberal government's refusal to produce documents relating to STDC, the Sustainable Development Technology Company of Canada, also called the Green Slush Fund lately. The Parliament ordered the government and STDC to produce documents. That was back in June of this year. And why is the Prime Minister and his cabinet and his government refusing to deliver those documents? Well, we don't know. But the longer that they delay, the more suspicious we become. Are some of the cabinet ministers involved? Are they involved in the graft related to the Green Slush Fund? I think that they need to come out and tell us what's going on. Now, the Liberals have raised specious arguments about why they can ignore this order, why they don't have to comply with it, something about contravening the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. What are the arguments? Well, we don't know, right? Because they haven't really stated them very clearly. And besides, who are they to judge? They're one of the litigants in this whole litigation. They're not the judge. And what the Liberals are conveniently ignoring is that the rights of Parliament are spelled out in our Constitution. We can look to Section 3, 4, and 5 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, but we can also look at the preamble of the Constitution Act 1867, which has this to say: Canada shall have a constitution similar in principle to that of the United Kingdom. That goes back 157 years now in our history. Section 18 of the Constitution Act also defines parliamentary privilege for the House of Commons and all its members as those enjoyed and exercised by the House of Commons of Parliament of the United Kingdom of Great Britain. Those privileges as they existed the day that Canada became a nation, July 1st, 1867. Now, that latter point is very important because with that comes 650 years of parliamentary tradition and history coming out of the mother of all parliaments in Westminster. One of those traditions is, of course, the principle of parliamentary sovereignty, that Parliament can make or unmake any law that it deems just and appropriate. Now, another one of these age-old traditions is the concept of responsible government, where the government, the Prime Minister and his cabinet, must always retain the confidence of the House, and they must answer questions from the opposition during daily question period relating to the business of government. And a third way that the House of Commons keeps the government to account is through motions, directing the government to do certain things. Now, an early example of that, at least early in my career, was a Conservative opposition motion in December 2019, just a few months after I had been elected, to create a special all-party committee of Parliament on China-Canada relations. That motion passed with the support of the Bloc Québécois and the NDP members of Parliament. Only the Liberals voted against it. Someone had pointed out at the time that this is the first time that the Liberal government under the current Prime Minister had lost a significant vote. Of course, 4 years earlier, they had been elected as a majority government, and so they could put through any legislation that they want or stopped any legislation or motions that they didn't like. Well, it was a whole new dynamic now. It was a minority government, and the Liberals had not yet figured out how they had to play nice with the opposition parties for a minority government, minority parliament to be successful. But in any event, I want to point out that the Liberals did comply with that motion, and we created a special committee on Canada-China relations. But things deteriorated pretty quickly after that. And we saw time and again that these Liberals, under the current Prime Minister, are holding Parliament in contempt. I'm going to raise 3 examples of when that happened. And of course, just to anticipate the end of my speech, the third example is going to be the Green Slush Fund that we're talking about, that is the subject of the day. But the first example was a pandemic power grab. Now, I remember that day very well. It was March 13th, 2020. The World Health Organization had called this virus to be a worldwide pandemic. The parties consulted, and we agreed that we would suspend Parliament for 5 weeks, hoping that perhaps the worst of things would be over by then. But then the Liberals tried to pull a fast one on us. Just a couple of weeks later, they put forward a proposal that Parliament would be suspended for a long period of time, and that the Liberals, would be given all the power that they want to tax as they please, to spend as they please, without parliamentary oversight, which we found just unbelievable. Parliament has worked very effectively during other times of crisis, so what was so different this time? We put a quick stop to this insanity, and the Liberals had to back down. The second example of this government holding Parliament in contempt was with the Winnipeg lab affair. The Special Committee on China Relations, which we know that the Liberals didn't like very much, was investigating rumors that 2 employees of the Public Health Agency of Canada had been fired because of their direct ties to the Beijing communist regime. The committee ordered the production of documents, similarly to what we're doing with the Green Slush Fund, and on June 2nd, Parliament voted to confirm that order. The Liberals voted no, of course. Now, the government agency, PHAC, Public Health Agency Canada, didn't comply with this order, so on June 17, 2022, the House declared the agency to be in contempt of Parliament, in order that the President appear here in Parliament, in the House of Commons, to be reprimanded in public and to be ordered to produce the documents. The Speaker of the day, Mr. Anthony Rhoda, supported the majority of the House, of course. He was doing his job.
So the honourable member is still a sitting member of the House, so I would say the honourable member for Timiskaming would be probably more appropriate. The honourable member for Langley Aldergrove.
Yes, of course. I have the greatest respect for the member of, I forget the name of the riding, but the former Speaker of the House. He supported us, of course. He was doing his job. That's what the Speaker is supposed to do. Now, we know the Liberals didn't like this committee, the Special Committee on China-Canada Relations, right from the start. We know that they didn't like the makeup of the 43rd Parliament, a divided House, and we knew that they wouldn't like this order for the production of documents because they wanted to keep all this ugly business that was going on in the Winnipeg labs and the relationship with the Wuhan lab in China. We wanted to keep all that ugly business undercover. But what we did not know, Mr. Speaker, was the degree of contempt that this Liberal Party held for Parliament. But we found that out when the Attorney General, the Liberal Attorney General, sued the Speaker of the House, who is a member of the Liberal Party. A big showdown in court, the Attorney General's lawyers versus the Speaker's lawyers, all at the taxpayer expense, of course, because we were paying for all the lawyers. We knew that this was a loser case right from the very, very start. We knew that no one was going to come out the winner, maybe except the lawyers, of course, who were charging their full hourly rate. In the end, the whole case fizzled out when the Prime Minister made his trip to the Governor General's mansion and asked her to dissolve Parliament and to drop the writ for a new election. In the end, the 43rd Parliament lasted only a mere 23 months. We had thought that the Prime Minister would do the responsible thing and wait until the pandemic was behind us. But no, right in the middle of a pandemic, he thought that perhaps Canadians would affirm what he had been doing, what they had been doing, and that they would return a majority government for the Liberals. Well, we all know how that ended. The 44th Parliament, the one that we're in right now, looks very much like the 43rd Parliament. $600 million in expenses to run that election campaign, and the House looks almost exactly as it did before. Roughly the same number of Liberals and Conservatives and NDP and the Bloc Québécois. We lost some of our colleagues, we gained a few others. Same with the other parties. But in the end, the Liberal government, even though they lost the popular vote, had the most seats, so they got to form government. The Conservatives were the official opposition, and the Bloc Québécois and the NDP looked pretty much like that they did before. Now, and that brings me to the current issue of the day, the Green Slush Fund. The third example of this Liberal government holding Parliament in contempt. The scandal started with some whistleblowers who worked at Sustainable Development Technology Canada, who smelled a rat and called in the Auditor General. Now, a little bit of background. STDC is a federally owned and created company with a mandate to promote public and private investment in green technology. A laudable goal, I would say. And if the Prime Minister had just left things alone, STDC today would still be functioning and fulfilling its mandate. But he could not resist putting his fingerprints all over that company. He fired the then current board, Mr. Jim Balsillie, who's very capable at his job, but had some different disagreements with the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister put in all his own people, friends of the Liberal Party. We know all of this from the Independent Auditor's report, which he tabled with Parliament on June 4, 2024. Now, just a couple of examples from the report, and I'm not going to list all of them because many of the other speakers have already done so. But $390 million misallocated to insiders, board members that the Prime Minister had appointed, so $390 million to those, or to non-qualifying projects that didn't even meet the criteria. Also, 186 instances of conflict of interest, board directors voting money for their own companies. Hey, please vote for my, I'm going to step out of the room, please vote for my application of a couple of $1 million, and then I'll return the favor to you when it's your turn to step out. So it was just friends distributing taxpayer money amongst themselves. This is what one of the whistleblowers said after the report, the auditor's report, came out. Just as I always was confident that the Auditor General would confirm the financial mismanagement of STDC, I remain equally confident that the RCMP will substantiate criminal activities that occurred within the organization. Now, these are very serious words. So not just mismanagement, but criminal activity. So the official opposition did what we are supposed to do, hold this government to account, and we put forward a motion for the production of documents. The NDP and the Bloc Québécois voted with us, doing their job as fellow opposition members. It's also their job to hold the government to account. That motion passed on June 10th, 6 days after the Auditor General's report came out. The Liberals, of course, were not happy that the motion passed, but this is the reality of a minority house, where they need to get the support of at least one of the parties to get their way. They failed. They did not do that. The order was made. Parliament is supreme. Parliament has the authority to do this. This is definitely within our jurisdiction to do so, but the Liberals just refuse. they think that they have some arguments to say that they don't have to comply with the order, which they didn't. They ignored it. And so we came back here to Ottawa, to Parliament in September, and things got ugly. We appealed to the Speaker and asked him to rule on the question of privilege. We argued, based on the age-old rules, that Parliament has the right, the privilege of demanding the production of documents when they see fit to do so. The Speaker ruled in our favor, and I'm just going to read one sentence from the Speaker's ruling. The Chair cannot come to any other conclusion but to find that a prima facie case of privilege, question of privilege has been established. Now, Mr. Speaker, you'd think that that would be the end of the story. It was pretty clear. But we know what these Liberals think about speakers who make rulings that they disagree with. They sue them, hoping maybe to find a judge that is going to turn a blind eye to the centuries-old traditions of parliamentary proceedings, parliamentary privilege. They did it before. Will they do it again? Or will they just keep dodging and weaving as they have for the last 4 weeks, actually since June, so that nothing gets done around here? And Mr. Speaker, it is because of this contemptuous behavior of the Liberal government that things have ground to a halt here in Canada's Parliament. Now, we know the Liberals don't like an aggressive opposition. I get it. They just think that we should all play nice. Hey, we're all in this together, they like to say. But we are just doing our job as the official opposition, holding this government to account as prescribed by Canada's Constitution. Now, the Liberals need to do their job and comply with the order so that we can all get back to work. That's what we want to do, Mr. Speaker. We've got important work to do here. But the Liberals' refusal to act is what's causing us to have ground to a halt here. Now, the Liberals have not formally lost confidence of the House because the NDP, despite all their bluff and blunder, continue to support this corrupt and incompetent regime. But the Liberals have lost the confidence of the people of Canada. I know that. This is what my colleagues and I are hearing at home, in our ridings, when we're out knocking on doors, when we're at events in our communities. It's what we heard in the 2 recent by-elections, where the Liberals' base supporters are even saying, enough is enough. Time for a change. Now, here's an idea for the Prime Minister. Don't comply with the order, but the Green Slush Fund, don't even bother taking the Speaker to court. You will lose. They will lose. Take a walk to the Governor-General's mansion and ask her to dissolve the 44th Parliament and call an election, because this is what Canadians want. They are ready for a government that will stop the corruption, that will fix what the Liberals have broken, that will offer common sense solutions to the problems facing ordinary Canadians, the people that we listen to. Canadians deserve a government that will axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. Canadians deserve a government that doesn't play favorites but creates an environment where non-insiders can work hard and get ahead. They deserve a Canada. Canadians deserve a Canada that delivers on its promise to all who call it home, that hard work earns a powerful paycheck, and for pensioners and for workers, which buys an affordable home on a safe street in a country where everyone from anywhere can do anything as long as they work hard. And Mr. Speaker, all of this is achievable, but first we need an election. Call a carbon tax election. Thank you.